So what is the point of this video? Well, I'd like to look at the power structures from a specific time period of Western culture in the past and connect it to what I deem to be the modern day equivalent in the United States. More specifically, I'd like to analyze how the group or person in power uses art and literature, typical tools of self-expression, to influence the masses, and then show how this has changed over time. Okay, so we're talking about power structures in Western culture, but what does the word power even really mean? Well, Merriam-Webster defines power as being possession of control, authority, or influence over others. Okay, so now that we have a working definition of what power is, let's get started. I'd really love to dive into the things happening in the Baroque period, which started around the 1600s, but to understand a lot of what's happening there, we need to go a little bit back further first. So we're going to jump back to the 1500s and set the scene. Okay, so if you know anything about Western Europe at this time, you know that the man of the house, so to speak, was the Catholic Church. So during this time, the Catholic Church was enormous. They were incredibly wealthy, and they had considerable influence over the masses. But in 1517, when Martin Luther, a German professor of theology and a priest, published his 95 Theses that criticized the Catholic Church, it was considered the spark of the Protestant Reformation. This Reformation was so detrimental to the Catholic Church that it was described as the religious, political, intellectual, and cultural upheaval that splintered Catholic Europe. Now, if you're the Catholic Church, the leading power in the land, and you're suddenly being undermined by the Protestant Reformation and losing followers and control right and left, you clearly have to do something. So, to combat the Reformation, the Catholic Church called the Council of Trent, which was held between 1543 and 1563. This council's main goal was to condemn Protestantism and clarify the doctrines of the Catholic Church. So they just wanted to clarify their goals and ideas and find a way to maintain the control that they were so used to having. Okay, so you call the council and they decide that the church needs to recenter around piety, just generally put more focus on being religious. Easy enough for the members of the church, perhaps, but how do you extend that influence over the masses you so desperately want to retain control over? How do you stop your followers from splintering off and becoming Protestant? It's not as though the Catholic Church can put an ad before a YouTube video to get the word out about their new image in those times. So how do you connect with everyone? The peasants, even the illiterate? The answer was through a medium everyone loved dearly: art. So, contrary to Protestant art, the council urged for religious imagery in Catholic art. They said that the images of Christ, of the Virgin Mother of God, and of other saints are to be placed and retained especially in churches, and set before the eyes of the faithful, so that they may fashion their own life and conduct in imitation of the saints, and be moved to adore and love God and cultivate piety. And over the following decades, the Church's insistence of religious art can be seen, especially in the Baroque period. An exemplary example of a religious piece from the Baroque period is the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. The 11.5-foot tall piece is located in the Cornaro Chapel in Rome, just above the altar. Bernini created the sculpture based on a scene from Saint Teresa's writing. In this scene, Saint Teresa is swooning, an angel standing over her with a golden spear in his hand, one that had apparently just pierced her heart with multiple times. Saint Teresa said of the angel, "He left me completely afire with a great love for God." This sculpture is the perfect example of the Baroque period because it showcases all the most common themes, such as exaggerated motion, which we can clearly see in the piece, as it seems the angel has just a second ago pulled the arrow back from Teresa, and the texture of her robes make them look as if they are still flowing, really giving the viewer the sense that this is an action shot. Another trademark of the Baroque, its love of drama, is quite obvious, as you're literally looking at a woman swooning as an angel is caught in the process of repeatedly plunging an arrow into her chest. I'm not sure you can get much more dramatic than that. But the most important part of this is its religious implications. Many have argued that the sculpture has a sexual meaning to it because we see Saint Teresa in a state of ecstasy, of sexual orgasm. Although it may come across this way because of Saint Teresa's expression in the sculpture, it doesn't seem like this was Bernini's intent. Instead, he was trying to represent a spiritual awakening, Teresa's new connection and love for God. A piece of art like this one is just one of many examples of religious art that the Catholic Church encouraged artists to make in this time to give new interest in religion and to show a love of God. So, the main argument that I'm trying to make here is that when the group in power, in this instance the Catholic Church, faced a challenge to their power or was threatened with possibly losing their influence, they used common forms of self-expression at that time. In this particular case, art, but also literature, to relate to the people that they had control over and to maintain their power. But what about modern day? When I take a look at the modern day United States and try to identify which group or person wields the most power, the answer seems fairly straightforward. It would be the president, the leader of the free world, and none other than Donald Trump. Now, up until this point, I've been making the argument that during the Baroque period, and many periods, the Catholic Church was the group in power. I'm here to tell you that I think a parallel can be drawn to Donald Trump using modern-day forms of self-expression to promote his own ideals and maintain his influence, just like the Catholic Church did hundreds of years ago, but today through a modern-day use of literature. Literature, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, can generally be defined as any body of written works, or even as any single writing deemed to have artistic or intellectual value. Taking this definition into consideration, a case can be made looking at Donald Trump's Twitter account that each one of his tweets could be considered a short written work or literature. Anyone familiar with Trump's Twitter knows that he tweets rather frequently, using his account to share his opinions on anything and everything, often defending himself against those he feels are trying to undermine him even. Although rather informal, these tweets are seen by thousands every day and give Trump an effective way to share his political views with the world, maintain his image, and drum up support. Overall, it can be said that Trump uses his Twitter account, this modern form of literature, to expand his outreach to American citizens, share his views, and maintain his influence over the masses, really to promote his ideals. The same way the Catholic Church used religious art to promote their ideals a few hundred years ago. And so with that, I hope I've shown you a comparison between the past and present about how those in power continue to use the most common forms of expression in Western culture to stay on top.